Hello and welcome to Better Body Movement. This class is designed to walk you through some of the most commonly corrupted movement patterns and help you to fix those in order to start feeling well throughout the day. So what we'll do is we're going to start with some self-myofascial release or self-massage in order to loosen the tight muscles in your body. Then we're going to get into a workout routine that actually will teach you how to completely change the way that you move in order to feel well. I'm excited that you've joined us. Please like this video or subscribe to the channel. If you subscribe, you're going to get notifications of when we do go live, as well as any new videos that we post. So you do those right now, that way we make sure we have them done. We'll see you in a little bit. Carpal tunnel syndrome commonly is caused by forearm muscles that get overly tight and create compression on your carpals. We will start by working through the extensor digitorum, the extensor carpi radialis longus and brevis, and extensor carpi ulnaris. Start with a lacrosse ball on the upper part of the forearm. You'll notice when you make a fist and squeeze the knuckles up, the muscles will tighten in the upper part of the forearm near the elbow. Press down with the lacrosse ball and flex the wrist. Release the pressure on the lacrosse ball, returning the wrist to extension or knuckles up. Repeat this process multiple times over the top side of the forearm in the extensors of the wrist. Do this at a brisk pace. An additional way to work this muscle tissue is by using your own forearm. Locate the flexors of the wrist by squeezing the knuckles up. Lay your arm across your knees and press your elbow into the tissue. Repeat, knuckles up, pressure on, knuckles down, pressure off. Continue this process through the muscle on the top of the forearm. The next group of muscle tissue that creates more pressure on the carpals as well is on the inside of the forearm. These are called the Flexor carpi radialis and Ulnaris and Palmarus longus. Using a technique like the extensors, start with an open palm flexing your fingers towards the elbow as far as you can. After you put pressure down on the muscle tissue, using your opposite elbow, open your hand pointing your fingers to the floor as far as you possibly can. Lift the pressure, flex the wrist, bringing the fingers to the starting position. Continue this process for roughly 30 seconds in multiple spots, working briskly. The next area to focus on is the retinaculum. This is a ligamentous band around the wrist that keeps the tendons close to the bone. Oftentimes, the tendons underneath the retinaculum get adhered and make it very painful within the carpals themselves. Focusing on the retinaculum, glide the thumb up and down the entire band, spanning from the mid-wrist all the way into the base of the hand. Work vigorously with firm pressure for 30 seconds in order to break adhesions that lie deep within the carpals. Now it's time to perform a joint mobilization. You can see there are several bones that make up the carpal area of the wrist. We want to simply restore some range of motion to the carpals. Using your opposite hand, create a tight squeeze around the wrist and drag the hand away from the elbow as you hold the wrist. Begin to rotate the wrist in a big circle. Continue mobilizing the wrist for 30 seconds. Now we're going to create a stretch that's going to help the nerves communicate with the wrist. Sitting in a chair, press the shoulder down towards the floor. Rotate the thumb and wrist backwards, then flex the wrist and fingers up to the ceiling. Create a neural glide by looking down and away from that arm. Continue to perform this stretch 30 to 60 seconds. To begin working the muscles that are most affected by de Quervain's, hold your hand with your thumb straight up in the air. Then locate the tendon that is most superficial or on top of the wrist. This tendon will be controlled by a muscle that runs up the arm towards the elbow. I want you to contract the muscle tissue by flexing your wrist up and down while you press into the muscle tissue with your thumb. If this is too difficult to use your thumb, grab a lacrosse ball and place pressure directly onto the forearm using the palm of your hand. Remember to create this contraction 7 to 10 times, pressing straight into the muscle tissue near the elbow. Next, we are going to run pressure from the wrist up the forearm towards the elbow, creating a firm pressure, driving up and stretching the tissue. Again, we can use the lacrosse ball and just roll up the arm, creating a release of that tissue. Carpal tunnel syndrome commonly is caused by forearm muscles that get overly tight and create compression on your carpals. We will start by working through the extensor digitorum, the extensor carpi radialis longus and brevis, and extensor carpi ulnaris. Start with a lacrosse ball on the upper part of the forearm. You'll notice when you make a fist and squeeze the knuckles up, the muscles will tighten in the upper part of the forearm near the elbow. Press down with the lacrosse ball and flex the wrist. Release the pressure on the lacrosse ball, returning the wrist to extension or knuckles up. Repeat this process multiple times over the top side of the forearm in the extensors of the wrist. Do this at a brisk pace. An additional way to work this muscle tissue is by using your own forearm. Locate the flexors of the wrist by squeezing the knuckles up. Lay your arm across your knees and press your elbow into the tissue. Repeat, knuckles up, pressure on, knuckles down, pressure off. Continue this process through the muscle on the top of the forearm. The next group of muscle tissue that creates more pressure on the carpals as well is on the inside of the forearm. These are called the Flexor carpi radialis and Ulnaris and Palmarus longus. Using a technique like the extensors, start with an open palm, flexing your fingers towards the elbow as far as you can. After you put pressure down on the muscle tissue, using your opposite elbow, open your hand, pointing your fingers to the floor as far as you possibly can. Lift the pressure, flex the wrist, bringing the fingers to the starting position. Continue this process for roughly 30 seconds in multiple spots, working briskly. The next area to focus on is the retinaculum. This is a ligamentous band around the wrist that keeps the tendons close to the bone. Oftentimes, the tendons underneath the retinaculum get adhered and make it very painful within the carpals themselves. Focusing on the retinaculum, glide the thumb up and down the entire band, spanning from the mid-wrist all the way into the base of the hand. Work vigorously with firm pressure for 30 seconds in order to break adhesions that lie deep within the carpals. Now it's time to perform a joint mobilization. You can see there are several bones that make up the carpal area of the wrist. We want to simply restore some range of motion to the carpals. Using your opposite hand, create a tight squeeze around the wrist and drag the hand away from the elbow as you hold the wrist. Begin to rotate the wrist in a big circle. Continue mobilizing the wrist for 30 seconds. Now we're going to create a stretch that's going to help the nerves communicate with the wrist. Sitting in a chair, press the shoulder down towards the floor. Rotate the thumb and wrist backwards, then flex the wrist and fingers up to the ceiling. Create a neural glide by looking down and away from that arm. Continue to perform this stretch 30 to 60 seconds. To begin working the muscles that are most affected by de Quervains, hold your hand with your thumb straight up in the air. Then locate the tendon that is most superficial or on top of the wrist. This tendon will be controlled by a muscle that runs up the arm towards the elbow. I want you to contract the muscle tissue by flexing your wrist up and down while you press into the muscle tissue with your thumb. If this is too difficult to use your thumb, grab a lacrosse ball and place pressure directly onto the forearm using the palm of your hand. Remember to create this contraction 7 to 10 times, pressing straight into the muscle tissue near the elbow. Next, we are going to run pressure from the wrist up the forearm towards the elbow, creating a firm pressure, driving up and stretching the tissue. Again, we can use the lacrosse ball and just roll up the arm, creating a release of that tissue.
Kind of does. All right, good morning, everyone. It is a new week, so we get to go and return back to all of our awesome training. So today is the core or ab strengthening training, so we're going to try to make sure that our core is working the way that it should. And then we obviously had a little carpal tunnel work, which was kind of interesting for me because we went rock climbing on Saturday night, and man, my forearms are a bit sore. If I squeeze my fingers together, it's a little tight. But kiddos had a great time. That was absolutely fantastic. Up in Albert Lea, so their community ed center in Albert Lea has this big rock wall. It's about 25 feet, and you can kind of go across, and it's got different angles and all this stuff you can work on. And then like ropes, and they got a pegboard up there, so there's a lot of different things you can do. But yeah, on Fridays and Saturdays, it actually is the Freeborn County of Wellness Foundation or something like that. They actually pay for all of the climbers, so you get shoes, harness, a little bit of training, and then they have belays who will take you up and bring you back down as you work through it, all for free. So it was basically just price of gas. I'm like, well, geez, gas isn't even as expensive as taking all the kids to a movie. So it's like, well, let's go do that. So we had an absolute blast. Lauren was really excited because she did a really challenging course. So basically there's like a corner, and then at the top, like about halfway up the corner, there's like a shelf that is built out. So she went up underneath the shelf, grabbed underneath one of the things, and then had to reach all the way over and grab another big one, and she ended up making it all the way past that shelf. So it was just really cool. All the kiddos had a really fun time, and the experience was just so great. And I think it's really fun for the kids. So like Lauren especially, she really was understanding, like, just because something feels hard doesn't mean you can't do it, right? Sometimes it takes just that little extra effort to do one thing. And she had a couple times she had this crazy reach to a big, like just a big jump, especially for a little girl, and she made it. And she tried twice. Oh man, my hands are really tired. I think I'm gonna quit. Just let me down. And she stayed up there, and then ended up getting it. And it's like, well, that is what we're shooting for. And then I felt terrible because I went for one that was really a tough one for me, and I would get right on top, and boom, there was nothing left in my fingers. because I was trying to jump to it and grab on, and just I lost it. I got it once, but then after I finally got it, it was just shot, nothing left. So that's how our weekend was and what we were doing. But let's go through our dedicates. Again, Lori's mom, doing dialysis 3 times a week. Ethan with a stage 4 liver and bile duct cancer. My friend's wife, who was diagnosed with breast cancer, they're doing natural means to try to effectively neutralize that cancer. So good things there, I do believe. Sky's transplant process. The update for that is on the Better Body Movement VIP Facebook page. So if you want to know more about specifically how to pray every single day for Sky, I would highly recommend going on there and looking at the plan or the schedule that they put out on how it's supposed to progress. Erin continued to pray for her ankle and foot, just that the infection would leave. Appears that everything is still working. The surgery did what it was supposed to. It's just that it's infected. So be praying for the cleaning of that wound, that could be healed up. Carol with her knee surgery, things are progressing. She continues to gain more and more with her knee, so that is absolutely wonderful. Kira with the return of her breast cancer, and we're praying for Barbara and Tom. So hopefully that's all kind of the prayers that we're going for. If you guys have anything else, just let me know. I'd love to put more people on our prayer board and be praying for them during our time here as we dedicate them in our workouts. Our verse of the day, judge not that you be not judged. Matthew 7:1. That is a pretty firm command, making it seem as though you will be judged to the measure in which you judge people. So, yeah.
Our job.
I don't like to think I sit on the jury, and I'm definitely not the judge, so I must be the guy who's standing outside the door of the courtroom. Have no idea what's going on with someone else. None.
What do we say? Daryl says, I don't own a soul.
That's absolutely right. All right, let's go ahead and transition into our core workout. Go ahead and get a spot on the floor. I do want you challenging yourself to get down the floor and standing back up. If you can do that on the breaks, awesome. If you only do it one time to get down and stay down and then get up at the end of this, that's fine too. Let's get this started. Remember, you might want a foam roller or a pillow before we get started. We will be using something to squeeze between the knees, so make sure you have that ready to go.
3, 2, 1. Pelvic tilt.
Okay, here we go. Remember, with your pelvic tilt, core compression really hard. So we want to Kegel, make a really tight pelvic floor. It's like holding in a fart, and then squeeze your core, almost like you're going to do a sit-up, but keep your shoulders down on the ground. Okay, so if you need to practice that way as well, you can go ahead and do a little crunch, feel your core get really tight, and then see if you can keep it there while you lay your head and shoulders back onto the floor, right? Because if we think we're trying to train daily postures and daily movements, I'm not going to get my core tight and walk around in this kind of posture, right? I'm not going to crunch while I walk around. But what I want to do is hold and brace that tight, right? Hold the compression here with my shoulders down and back. So we'll practice that as we go through. And I do want to remind you, we are live in a studio.
Prepare for pelvic tilt with knee fall out.
So you're going to hear some chit-chat in the background. Good core compression as we go through the knee fall out. So feet together.
Pelvic tilt with knee fall out.
Okay, so we're going to do that Kegel core compression first. Get that really tight. Then slowly let your knee go out to the side. If you feel your hips move with that outward motion, right? So it should just pivot right in the hip joint. Out, out, out. If you go out and it starts to catch the hips and the hips roll on the floor, you've lost your core. So get your core tighter. Squeeze, 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 squeeze as much as you possibly can.
That's halfway.
Pull those shoulder blades down and back. Recompress that core every single time. So a big one is as your knee goes out to its lowest point, we're not shooting for the floor. What we're shooting for is a tight core. So just go out to where it stops, bring it back up, Every time you get to the out, re-squeeze the core. Tight, tight, tight. Okay, again, imagine a bowling ball dropping on your stomach.
3,
You want to be able to
2,
take that.
1. Prepare for pelvic tilt with adduction.
All right, tilt with adduction. So create that nice tight squeeze in the core. Then we're going to squeeze the knees, release the knees,
3,
then release the
2,
core.
1. Pelvic tilt with adduction.
So remember, with the way that we're training this, every single movement that we make through core day, the core should be the first thing on, last thing off. So that way, as we go through movement through the day, we get a little bit more aware that I can actually hold my core tight while I create these movements in the hips or in the shoulders, right? And that's the whole point, is that we retrain the body to stay tight through the core while I create a stepping motion, while I create
That's
a pushing
halfway.
motion or a pulling motion. That I don't forget this as easily. Because so often through the day, as we push and we relax and then the core's not working, but we want to stabilize that spine through the day as we're going. Good core compression, tight, tight, tight. Squeeze those knees, release the knees, keep the core,
Three,
then
2,
release the core.
1. Prepare for pelvic tilt with knee toward chest.
Awesome. Okay, tilt with knee toward chest. So this is like a march. You're going to bring one foot up, set back down, other foot up, set back down. And you can just
3,
shoot for like 90
2,
degrees.
1. Pelvic tilt with knee toward chest.
Okay, so if you think, put your hands out like your knee's going to hit your palm, that'll get you about to 90 degrees, and then you can set that foot back down. But again, as your knee is coming up and going back down, re-squeeze the core. So especially first round, I'm always okay with going slow. Go really slow. Make sure your core is tight. You have to really think through it, process all of that information without losing
That's
what's going
halfway.
on because of the distraction of moving your hips, right? Keep that core compressed, nice and tight. Good, firm squeeze. A firm squeeze.
3,
Very good,
2,
ladies.
1. Prepare for pelvic tilt with bridge.
Awesome. Tilt and bridge.
Do that same motion, that same spot.
3, 2, 1. Pelvic tilt with bridge.
Okay, again, compress that core nice and tight. The bridge, you're squeezing your butt cheeks together, so you do want your feet shoulder width wide or even just a little wider to make sure those knees are apart. You're pressing down, squeezing like you're trying to pinch a penny between your butt cheeks. Okay? And again, we're not peeling off the floor like a sticker. I want you to be so tight through your core that it lifts straight up and sets
That's
right back
halfway.
down. A lot of times what we experience is the hips and the ribs end up touching the ground and our low back has arched, right? So we might be flat as we start, but as we go up, it's like the back arches and then we go to set back down, and now we have this gap in the back, okay? Keep that core tight. So that means you might not go as high in the air, right? Level out,
3,
plane out.
2,
Don't lift
1.
as high, just make sure the
Prepare
core
for
stays
shoulder
tight.
drops.
Nice shoulder drops. So first thing we're gonna do, shoulders all the way back against the floor as tight as you can. Reach down for your feet. Take those shoulders out of the ears, okay?
3,
Then we'll
2,
set up in that starting
1.
position.
Shoulder drop.
Okay, again, if you have shoulder pain, acute pain especially, only go as far as your arm allows, pain-free. Stop, pull your shoulder blade back down and back. Yes, if you move only 1 inch and pain starts, that's fine. Stop there, pull the shoulder blade back down and back. My guess is, as soon as you start, your shoulders up and forward, way out, hanging out here, and then we go to move, and oh,
That's
wow,
halfway.
it pinches already. But if we can train scapular stability and pull that down and back, then we'll be able to start increasing range of motion as you build stability. So it's not an overnight fix, it's not a today fix. You might see some improvement as you train that shoulder into position. However, it will take time, so that's why we do this, repeating over and over and over, those little steps to always get better, okay?
3, 2, 1. Prepare for dead bug.
Awesome. Okay, get ready for the dead bug. Again, core compressed, really tight, shoulder blades down and back, just
3,
as firm as you
2,
possibly can.
1. Dead bug.
Yeah, let's try that one. So this one, so this would be around this wall.
Very good.
So,
Awesome. Tight core compression. Squeeze nice and firm. Tight, 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 tight. Get shoulder blades down and back. Remember, don't overextend
That's
your leg.
halfway.
A lot of times when we reach that leg out too far, the low back starts to lift off the ground. We feel back pain, so squeeze that core. You might not even go out. You might just kick your leg straight up to the ceiling as you extend the other arm, okay? But make sure that core is tight and you brace your spine. There should be no change whatsoever in your core. Almost there, ladies. Do your
3,
best all the way
2,
through.
1. Long rest.
Awesome. Well, fantastic work. Very good. Take a break if you need to. Grab a drink. Would love for you to get up, take a little walk around, and then come back. If nothing else, we practice getting up and down off the floor. Okay, round 2, we're going to do something a little different. I want you to think you're peeling or lifting 50% of the pressure off of your feet. Okay, so as you're doing this, compress, right, and then lift just half the weight. So imagine your feet weigh 20 pounds. I want it to read 10 pounds, right? So just a tiny pull. Make sure your core stays tight. If you lose a little bit,
3,
re-squeeze.
2,
Okay?
1.
Let's go ahead and get
Prepare
set
for
back up
pelvic
on the
tilt.
floor. And then we'll get taken off here for the next one.
Yeah.
Remember, do your best all the way through the movement.
3, 2, 1. Pelvic tilt.
Okay, pelvic tilt. Good core compression. Squeeze nice and tight. 50% of the weight off your feet. So you shouldn't even move. You're just firing what we call the hip flexor, right? You should just feel those hips trying to pull the knees gently and make sure that core doesn't break and your back leaves the ground. Right? Again, lumbar stability. This is what we're trying to develop. When we compress the core the right way, all of a sudden your spine
That's halfway.
comes into an alignment where the vertebrae sit in a really good flat position, the way that it's designed to sit. Versus if we go without that and we can create a rotation in the vertebrae, you're going to end up pinching things that shouldn't be pinched, right? We have additional pressure on those areas. So we want to build that core, build spinal stability, especially through
3,
movement. Lift,
2,
push, or pull.
1. Prepare for pelvic tilt with knee fall out.
Okay, so again, tilt with knee fall out. So same thing, okay, feet together, Kegel, core compression. As your knee goes out to the side, lifting the pressure off your
3,
feet.
2, 1. Pelvic tilt with knee fall out.
Okay, so again, Kegel core, lift the feet a tiny bit out to the side, back up, and again, your feet should not leave the ground. They should not leave the ground. You're just pulling a tiny bit, okay? And through that pull, you're checking your core. The whole point of the pull is to engage the core more. If you don't engage more and your back comes up off the floor, reset. Get the back flat. Compress.
That's halfway.
Firm, firm, firm. Hold that tight.
Oh, yeah.
Hold it tight, gently lifting on those feet. Wonderful work, ladies. Doing your best. Doing your best. Squeeze nice and tight. Firm compression all the way through. Almost there.
3, 2, 1. Prepare for pelvic tilt
Awesome.
with adduction.
Okay, tilt with adduction. Again, compress that core, squeeze nice and tight.
3,
Release
2,
the knees.
1. Pelvic tilt with adduction.
Okay, so Kegel, core, those are both on. Squeeze those knees, gently lift on the feet, set back down, release the knees, keeping the core the whole time, then release the core. Okay, so again, today is core day. It is abs. It is forcing compression through your spine so it holds and stabilizes no matter what movement we choose to do. Because we make choices to move those knees in all sorts of positions, in and
That's
out of the
halfway.
car, right? The knee goes in and out. Core is compressed. Bring your knee together, right? So again, re-squeezing, going all the way through it. Again, do your absolute best. All the
3,
way through, ladies.
2, 1. Prepare for pelvic tilt with knee toward chest. 3, 2, 1. Pelvic tilt with knee toward chest.
Okay, good march. Again, you're re-squeezing the core, right? So Kegel, core compression, lift gently on both feet, then start moving one, back down, other up. This is not a scissors kick. So if both feet are moving at the same time, you know that's wrong, okay? One at
That's
a time.
halfway.
Re-squeeze that core. We're trying to check those hips and see if they're Rubik's cubing, rolling left and right as you pull those hips, right? There should be no change in your waist on the ground. Okay, your low back should be pressed into the floor, nice and tight. Core compressed, tight, 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 tight. Doing your best all the way through, ladies. And again, shoulders down and back. Right, shoulders back. Hold yourself in
3,
a nice
2,
tall position.
1. Prepare for pelvic tilt with
Awesome.
bridge.
Okay, tilt and bridge. So again, we're not peeling off the floor like a sticker, and we want to return ribs, low back, and hips all simultaneously.
3,
Lift,
2,
set back down.
1. Pelvic tilt with bridge.
Okay, so core compressed. Squeeze the butt cheeks together, lift, set back down. Again, if you lift too far and your back arches and you feel that when you set back down, just try it again. Don't go as high. Squeeze tight, tight, tight. Doing your absolute best all the way through the movement. Squeeze, burn, 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 burn.
That's
And
halfway.
Your absolute best. Your absolute best. Press tight, 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 tight. Very good. Tight squeeze all the way through.
3, 2, 1. Prepare for shoulder drops.
Okay, shoulder drops. So again, the very first thing, pinch your shoulders all the way back to the floor and then
3,
reach all the way
2,
down to your feet.
1. Shoulder drop.
Okay. Now, when you get to that position, still compress the core. That's really difficult for most people because we end up getting really tight through the pecs, and that draws or forces your shoulders forward. That means they're pulling on your rib cage. So if I pull those back, it's going to want to lift my rib cage, right? So we're training now the core to be tight, hold the rib cage, but yet pull against.
That's halfway.
It's going to feel like it's stretching up front. That's fine, okay? Again, do whatever movement that you can do. You should feel comfortable through it. If you only go 3 inches, that's fine. Return to that starting position of shoulders down, back, recheck the core. Recheck the core. I cannot say that enough. Doing your absolute best all the way through, okay? Doing
3,
good, Marcia.
2, 1. Prepare for dead bug.
Awesome. Okay, dead bugs, remember, do not overextend the knees. I do want you to get to a position where it's uncomfortable, it's difficult, but yet you are
3,
winning. core
2,
is tight.
1.
If you bird dog, don't
Dead bug.
cat or cow. I don't want your spine to change. Okay, this is a stability exercise for both shoulders and hips, waist, so that way you're not shifting and transitioning through. Okay? Awesome exercise to work through. And again, we don't overextend as to arch the back when we go through that extension process. It's all about squeeze, maintain that compression through your spine, and don't change. If you need little breaks, take them, that's fine.
That's halfway.
Because again, it's always about, can you return, can you get back to that real tight squeeze through the core? That's what we want.
Come on back.
Good, tight squeeze, tight squeeze, tight
How's
squeeze.
it feeling?
Pull through. Do your absolute best, your absolute best. Almost
3,
there.
2, 1. Long rest.
Very good. All right, that is it for round 2. So round 3, guess what? We're gonna make it more difficult. If you're able, the goal is to hover your feet just 1 inch off the floor through the exercises, okay? Obviously, the bridge, we can't do that, but every other one, we're gonna try to get those feet to hover. If you only get 1, awesome. If you can't get 1, that's fine. Work your way up to that. That's the whole point of doing this continually, making it a habit. By changing these daily habits, daily patterns, we can see a long-term effect that is
3,
more effective
2,
because it's
1.
compounding your strength.
Prepare for pelvic tilt.
Okay? That's why we don't really switch our exercise routines, is because we want those wins to get stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. That makes us more effective and reduces pain in
3,
the long term.
2, 1. Pelvic tilt.
Good core compression. As tight as you possibly can. Hover those feet 1 inch. If your back again leaves the floor, don't do that. Press the core, pull as much as you can till that core loosens up. Stop, re-squeeze the core. Pull on the knees. If it starts to loosen, stop. Pull the core back down. Okay, so it's always, nothing changes in the core. Nothing changes in the core.
That's halfway.
All right, very good. Finish nice and strong. We got 10 seconds left. I know it's really tough, but it should be. That's the only way we create change, is making it
3,
difficult.
2, 1. Prepare for pelvic
Which
tilt with knee fall out.
Marcia did a great job of. It's hard work, she says.
3, 2, 1. Pelvic tilt with knee fall out.
Well, and by saying that, you know, after all this time, it's hard work. It should be for anybody. I mean, I could probably take the most elite fitness athlete, put them through this, and they will get done and say, wow, that was really hard. Because the whole point is you are squeezing to your maximum capacity, just like any other person should be squeezing to their maximum capacity. That's why we don't see a limit on how effective
That's
this
halfway.
is, right? Over time, we're always challenging, making it stronger. Continue to squeeze all the way through. Squeeze hard, 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 hard. Then as that knee goes out, re-squeeze, and when it's all the way out to the side, compress, make sure that core didn't let go at all, bring the knee back up. Other side, squeeze tight. Out to the side,
3,
re-squeeze the
2,
core, bring it back
1.
up.
Prepare for pelvic tilt with
Relax.
adduction.
Very good.
Three, 2, 1. Pelvic tilt with adduction.
All right, good. Squeeze through the core, Kegel core compression, squeeze those knees. Hover the feet, 1, 2, set the feet back down, release the knees, then release the core. And then make sure, again, you're squeezing that core through the entire process. Very distinct movements, right? Core,
That's
knees,
halfway.
lift, set back down, knees release, core releases. Okay, very, very distinct. They should not slur tight and then slur loose all the way through. Okay, do your very, very best. Doing awesome work, ladies. Continue to squeeze through. Core tight, squeeze those knees, lift the feet, set the feet, release
3,
the knees,
2,
release the
1.
core.
Prepare for pelvic tilt with knee toward chest.
Awesome. Okay, back to the march. Remember, as we march those feet, the hips should not change or rotate. This one's
3,
pretty tough because you
2,
should be hovering
1.
both feet if
Pelvic
you're able.
tilt with knee toward chest.
And I don't think I can emphasize that enough. If you're able, right? If you are able right now to lift your feet and your core does not change, do that. If you're not able, if the strength seems really weak and the core lets go and your spine starts to move, that would be a problem, right? So we don't want to exacerbate that by thinking, oh, I'm doing better just by making this really hard and
halfway.
it, is hurting my back. Well, no, you're hurting your back for no reason, right? Not all pain is gain. Some pain is your body saying, don't do that. Okay, but again, compressing that core, holding firm. Tight.
3,
Very, very
2,
good.
1. Prepare for pelvic tilt with bridge.
Okay, tilt and bridge.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. Pelvic tilt with bridge.
And here we go, tilt and bridge. Remember, compress that core, squeeze your butt cheeks together nice and tight. Again, shoulders should be down and back. We shouldn't be rolling off the floor. And again, when you return to the floor, it should be the whole thing, right? Hips, low back, ribs, all touch, all lift. Touch, lift.
That's halfway.
Okay. Lost your Wednesday, right?
Good core compression. Squeeze nice and tight. Shoulder blades down and back.
Last check, I guess I'm outside. And then
3, 2, 1. Prepare for shoulder drops.
Good. Okay.
it can't be, that's all the movement and stuff. It's something.
Core compressed. Set those shoulders all the
3,
way down and back.
2, 1. Shoulder drop.
Okay, here we go. Again, only do what your shoulder's capable of. If you can get all the way to the floor, cool. Pull your shoulder back, down and back to that stable environment, making sure it's not jutting forward and you're not arching our back. Right? Shoulders down and back. They should be flat against the floor when you return, right? So it's a relaxation up overhead, right? I'm relaxing that shoulder and letting this go up. But
That's
as I
halfway.
return, I'm not just going to let the shoulder hang out there, right? I don't want the shoulder in my ear. I want to, as I return, I'm pulling the shoulder back into position. Okay, so it's how well can you activate those lats down your backside and pull your shoulder and return it to the appropriate position. And again, core tight. Oh man, the worst.
3,
Squeeze,
2,
squeeze.
1. Prepare
Awesome.
for dead bug.
Okay, dead bug or bird dogs. Remember, either one is fine. They're basically the same movement. They just place pressure in different points, right? So it takes a little bit more understanding, especially
3,
the bird dog. It's
2,
a lot more balance.
1. Dead bug.
So challenge is something totally different. And I know some people cannot go on their knees with the dead bug. That's fine. You can also do that standing over top of a chair. You just put your back flat basically on the floor, hands on the chair, and then go opposites, trying to balance on the chair if that makes sense. Okay, and again, remember, if you guys have questions, to ask all the way through, okay? Squeeze tight, 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 tight.
That's halfway.
Compress nice and firm. Again, as you are going, make sure that spine is braced. Get that tight, then create your movement. Core tight, create movement. Core tight, create movement. It'd be awesome to see that become a daily pattern all day long, right? Core tight, then move. Core tight, then stand up out of your chair.
3, 2, 1. Long rest.
Good. Well, absolutely fantastic work, ladies. Love seeing you here on Mondays for our core day getting started. So we are going to jump back into our carpal tunnel self-massage work. So remember, if you don't have any issues at all going on, do this video anyway. We want to be preventative with our massage work. We don't want to be trying to play catch up as soon as we do find pain. If you have an additional problem or a separate problem, maybe it's something in the shoulder, go to the dashboard, find that video for the shoulders, range of motion, whatever issue you have, and make sure you work through that. We're always trying to take care of pain problems. Once those are gone, we want to be preventative in the rest of our care. Have an absolutely fantastic day, ladies. Tomorrow will be interesting for us around here because apparently we're supposed to be ice and snow and
I thought that was supposed to be
see, everyone gets different information around here. So we were thinking somewhere around 4 o'clock through the night. Morning is roads might be bad.
tomorrow.
We'll see. Oh, okay. So Marshall will be at
And I
caregivers.
guess if it's going to be icy, I'll be thinking that, but she's doing hybrid now.
Okay. Well, and if that's the case, I'll just take my computer home tonight, and if I can't make it into here, I can still run it at home. So just might have a kid or two run through the video. All right. Have a wonderful day, ladies. Great to see you. I will see you again tomorrow when we transition into our upper body day. So have a wonderful day. As always, I'm here to help you move well so you live well.
Carpal tunnel syndrome commonly is caused by forearm muscles that get overly tight and create compression on your carpals. We will start by working through the extensor digitorum, the extensor carpi radialis longus and brevis, and extensor carpi ulnaris. Start with a lacrosse ball on the upper part of the forearm. You'll notice when you make a fist and squeeze the knuckles up, the muscles will tighten in the upper part of the forearm near the elbow. Press down with the lacrosse ball and flex the wrist. Release the pressure on the lacrosse ball, returning the wrist to extension or knuckles up. Repeat this process multiple times over the top side of the forearm in the extensors of the wrist. Do this at a brisk pace. An additional way to work this muscle tissue is by using your own forearm. Locate the flexors of the wrist by squeezing the knuckles up. Lay your arm across your knees and press your elbow into the tissue. Repeat, knuckles up, pressure on, knuckles down, pressure off. Continue this process through the muscle on the top of the forearm. The next group of muscle tissue that creates more pressure on the carpals as well is on the inside of the forearm. These are called the Flexor carpi radialis and Ulnaris and Palmarus longus. Using a technique like the extensors, start with an open palm flexing your fingers towards the elbow as far as you can. After you put pressure down on the muscle tissue, using your opposite elbow, open your hand pointing your fingers to the floor as far as you possibly can. Lift the pressure, flex the wrist, bringing the fingers to the starting position. Continue this process for roughly 30 seconds in multiple spots, working briskly. The next area to focus on is the retinaculum. This is a ligamentous band around the wrist that keeps the tendons close to the bone. Oftentimes, the tendons underneath the retinaculum get adhered and make it very painful within the carpals themselves. Focusing on the retinaculum, glide the thumb up and down the entire band, spanning from the mid-wrist all the way into the base of the hand. Work vigorously with firm pressure for 30 seconds in order to break adhesions that lie deep within the carpals. Now it's time to perform a joint mobilization. You can see there are several bones that make up the carpal area of the wrist. We want to simply restore some range of motion to the carpals. Using your opposite hand, create a tight squeeze around the wrist and drag the hand away from the elbow as you hold the wrist. Begin to rotate the wrist in a big circle. Continue mobilizing the wrist for 30 seconds. Now we're going to create a stretch that's going to help the nerves communicate with the wrist. Sitting in a chair, press the shoulder down towards the floor. Rotate the thumb and wrist backwards, then flex the wrist and fingers up to the ceiling. Create a neural glide by looking down and away from that arm. Continue to perform this stretch 30 to 60 seconds. To begin working the muscles that are most affected by de Quervains, hold your hand with your thumb straight up in the air. Then locate the tendon that is most superficial or on top of the wrist. This tendon will be controlled by a muscle that runs up the arm towards the elbow. I want you to contract the muscle tissue by flexing your wrist up and down while you press into the muscle tissue with your thumb. If this is too difficult to use your thumb, grab a lacrosse ball and place pressure directly onto the forearm using the palm of your hand. Remember to create this contraction 7 to 10 times, pressing straight into the muscle tissue near the elbow. Next, we are going to run pressure from the wrist up the forearm towards the elbow, creating a firm pressure, driving up and stretching the tissue. Again, we can use the lacrosse ball and just roll up the arm, creating a release of that tissue.